Hello and welcome to the CGS virtual seminar series. I am so excited about Dr. Yuting Wang giving our seminar today on the subject of the Chinese Muslims in the United Arab Emirates, religion, nationalism, and transnational identities. Dr. Wang is one of the most exciting fascinating people doing sociological research on the region, and I've every time I have met her, I've been absolutely and completely blown away by how absolutely brilliant she is. The format, as you probably already know, is Dr. Wang is going to talk a little bit about her background and the way that she arrived at the project that she arrived at, and in fact possibly even the subject that she's become interested in more broadly, life of the Chinese immigrants in the United Arab Emirates. And then she's going to give her talk today. Once she finishes, I'll stop the recording and then we'll have question and answer session. I also have to acknowledge Dr. Wang's incredible generosity because it is quite late in Sharjah at the moment. So I'm very grateful that you are here with us this late, and I hope that afterwards you can go and take a little break. So please, can I ask you to start speaking? Oh, I'm sorry. When you want me to start the, do you want me to start that?
Yeah, you can start the slides, and then I will.
Tell me when you want me to, and then I'll go on ahead.
Okay. Yeah, we had a small technical issue, so I had to rely on Lala to help me out here. Okay. All right. So yeah, you can either keep it like that or go on a full screen.
Okay.
It'll look slightly better with the visual. So thank you so much, Lala, for this opportunity. 9 o'clock is very normal for graduate students, but I've been out of graduate school for so long, and I've not been able to teach any graduate courses because I'm in a primarily undergraduate institution. So this gave me the vibe of, back to graduate school again. Even though it's afternoon for you, but it's evening for me. So I put on the background here just to give the ambience of the campus. Actually, this is how the campus look like at night. So hope that, we can kind of, reorient the time and space we're in. So thank you, Lala, for your very, very generous introduction. And likewise, I'm always, impressed by your research and your energy and their enthusiasm. So really appreciate the opportunity. And also, when Lala reached out to me and then told me about the format of the presentation, I feel, really sort of spoiled because very few people wanted to know your background. And then, we talk about our research, but then we don't really chat about how we arrived at this project. And so I'm taking the liberty today to tell you a little bit more about my research and how I arrived at this point. So a little bit of background information here, since I have created this cover. So on the left side, it's a sketch. It's my sketch, actually, of the ancient, the building inside one of the ancient mosques in China. It's located in Xi'an. I took some students there back in 2011, a long time ago, and it's still standing today. And so it's a very powerful symbol of the resilience of Muslim minority communities in China. On the right-hand side is a photo that I took of the relatively new Chinese community mosque in Dubai. And of course, the form and shape, and then really have a strong contrast here. One's very traditional Chinese style, the other one's quite sort of, if we want to refer to that as global. So my life sort of just navigate between these two spaces. And then, of course, I also made a stop in the United States before I came to the UAE. So the seminar, I gave a very general title, Chinese Muslims in the UAE, but my research is not really bounded in the UAE. I look at transnational ties and how religion intersect with nationalism as it, growth in as it grows in the transnational space. So, but then I wanted to really do locate, sort of UAE, and then to kind of highlight its importance of the location for my research, because a lot of observations that I had in the UAE inspired me and then empower me to look at this fascinating sort of transnational network this minority group have maintained. And of course, Chinese Muslims not alone in creating this kind of transnational space. And then we have so many examples. So here I'm just giving the taste of how it is done by the Chinese Muslims. And then because the strategic location of the UAE and in this particular time in historical perspective. So I think it fascinates me, and I hope it also gives you some ideas about your research. So that's where I'm going to start today. So Lala, if you can go to the next slide. So I actually, a little bit background about, my interest here, because today you're entertaining sorry, did I go anywhere? I think I turned off the slides or somehow. No worries. So basically, my dissertation was on a very, very different topic. I studied sociology of religion at at the University of Notre Dame, and my interest was about immigrant Muslims, because I arrived in a very specific time, which was 30 days after, before 9/11. So I was there very new, and 9/11 happened. So that's sort of, made me very interested in the experiences of Muslim immigrants. So that was my dissertation work. And then from there, I became naturally interested in the experiences of religious minorities. And I just happened to actually had an opportunity to collaborate with a group of Chinese sociologists, and also American sociologists who had interest in this rapidly changing Chinese society. So it was really sort of coincidence that I became involved in a project that was founded by Templeton Foundation many years ago. It's called Faith and Trust in the Emerging Market Economy of China. And so it was during the time of this sort of, rapid economic development in China. And that was also sort of, it was against this bigger backdrop of Islamophobia. So I went to China in 2006, and then end of 2006, early 2007. And I kind of, travel around the country and then start really for the first time getting to know this Chinese Muslim minority in cities, not really in small villages. And it was a really, really interesting time, because it was a time when Chinese government had a much more relaxed policies on Muslim minorities. So it was very, very vibrant scene when I encountered them. So that project later on resulted in publications. So that's where I started really getting involved in research about Chinese Muslims. But I think here I do want to define the term a little bit more, because my research is really about the Sinophone Muslims, not about the Turkic-speaking Uyghur Muslims, because I had no linguistic advantage there. And it was also because my involvement in this larger project that drew me into the research. And then that just located me in a slightly different sort of position than other researchers who encountered Islam in China and Chinese Muslims in a different time and place. Lale, next slide. Thank you. So during that period of time, I visited some of these largest urban areas in China where you'll find large Muslim population. For example, the center of Beijing, where the Hui ethnic minorities have lived for a very long time, and then schools, mosques, restaurants, and all sorts of small businesses flourished in the ethnic Hui enclaves or residential quarters. I also went to Zhengzhou, which is in the middle of China in Henan province, and then went down to Guangzhou, visited some of these ancient mosques, and then also encountered this very, very vibrant Muslim minority community in the business centers in China's manufacturing centers in southern, coastal areas. So next slide. In 2012, I also had chance to visit Yiwu, which was, the one of the very important nodes that connected China to the Middle East and South Asia to some of these new growing markets. And it is the biggest manufacturing centers in China. It has a very large commodity market where business people from South Asia, from Southeast Asia, from the Middle East, from Africa would travel to Yiwu for their one-stop shopping and then bring all sorts of commodities to the Middle East. And then so the connection became very powerful, very strong through these business activities. And then this is not something completely new, because over 1,000 years, Chinese Muslims have played a role as middlemen, and they have facilitated trade and commerce between China and the rest of the world, especially Central Asia and Arabian Peninsula. 2012, it was also slightly different. I think today, if you go to these places, you might see something different. But during that time, you can actually see things like Muslim Youth Activity Center, and this is what the board says there. It's in Chinese. It says "Welcome." It's a activity, a place, and then for communities, and especially children and teenagers, and they had sports games and all sorts of events going on there. It was a different time. So next slide. And then in 2014, I traveled a little bit more to see some of these remote areas in southwest China. And then when I reached the Yunnan province, and then also, encountered a very small Muslim minority, Sinophone Muslims, and who reside above 3,000 meters above sea level in a place called the Haba Snow-Capped Mountain. It was just really fascinating. Some of these content were, sort of published in my articles and book chapters. So I just wanted to give you some kind of, example to show that how I have sort of developed this interest, and then how I continue to explore various aspects of Chinese Muslim life, right? Throughout that period of time, from the early 2000s and the mid 2010, and then all the way till today. So just to give you that kind of perspective, because a lot of things have changed, right? But then we've also seen a lot of resilience, and then how people continue to tread this very complex time. And then that resilience, I think, is something that inspires researchers. So if you talk about how we arrive at our research project, and then eventually, complete research paper, I think in many ways, researchers and also would kind of draw attention to these communities, especially these small minority communities, and then give them that kind of support and confidence that their life still relevant and then matters a lot, and so their stories need to be told. So that's why I continue to pay attention. But then this time I shifted a little bit, and then to look at things that are happening outside China, because the minorities and their resilience is really sort of sustained by their ability to continuously negotiate that space, navigate, in these difficult times, and then through establishing transnational networks. And then they are very, creative, and then very resourceful. And so where I found them again, and obviously another, rising global city, or it's already a very powerful global city in the Middle East, and especially in the oil-rich Gulf region. So next slide. So this is where, I arrived actually in 2009. I completed my PhD dissertation. It was about immigrant Muslims in the United States. And I got involved in that project, looking at faith trusts in the rising economy of China in the first decade of 2000s. And then I was looking for a job, at the time. And then, it's just, again, another coincidence. I happened to come across a job ad posted by the American University of Sharjah, Department of International Studies. And then they were very vague about who they wanted to hire, but they did want a sociologist. So I applied for it. And luckily, I got it. So 2009, it was just, for the US, it was after 2007, the economic meltdown, and the job market was really bad. And so I was very lucky to have this sort of, opportunity and to go to a different place, to experience a different life. But the most importantly, I think, in retrospect, it was also very strategic time. Probably I should refer to that as opportune moment to really come to see the other side of the world. And as a sociologist, I think it was extremely exciting to encounter a very different context, and then to get to observe what was going on the ground. And then so these two pictures show two very important locations in the UAE. I mean, I didn't have to study anything related to China, but I was such a rare species, so to speak, in the UAE, because there were almost no Chinese sociologists, or there's really no Chinese academics in the region, and the number only grew sort of slowly over the last decade because of the need of engineering professors. So I'm still the only Chinese sociologist in the UAE. And there are other scholars, but they're not really in my field. There's no Chinese anthropologist. So I feel like, the opportunity just came to me and I had to do something. I'm just naturally curious about what is going on in these places because they're so central to the stories of UAE, to the stories of Dubai. And of course, you cannot ignore them because they're so prominent on the landscape, right? So here, on the right side, you have Dragon Mart, and which is sort of the face of China or Chinese commodities or Chinese productions and the Chinese economy, right? In Dubai, it's a very, very large, mile-long, dragon-shaped marketplace, and where you can find all sorts of things under the sun, whatever you want to buy, and then they definitely will have that on offer. The other picture is the old location of China Lights Industrial City, and it was the first sort of market, that attracted all these Chinese small and medium-sized businesses to the region. And it was established in the early 2000s, and then Dragon Mart was opened in 2005. So these kind of projects really became the anchor points of the flows. Whether that's capital or people or commodities from China to the region, to the Gulf region, and then from there, these things were dispatched into other parts of the world, and whether it's Africa or Europe or Central Asia. So this became a place where you inevitably find a large number of Chinese, and then because the nature of the UAE as a Muslim majority society, and because immigration policies and so on and so forth, so all of these forces, they really kind of converge here, and that's brought about a very large presence of Chinese Muslim community, and then that's where the stories will continue, and then that's where I also continue to do my research. And next slide. And so in the following decades, so from 2009 and then until 2019, let's talk about this think about this as a pre-COVID, pre-pandemic time, this rapid growth in terms of bilateral relations between China and then the UAE. And the UAE definitely has a very strong relationship today with China. It's not, deniable. The both countries have seen each other as partners. So, as a sociologist, we observe from afar, and then we and notice some of these interesting things happening on the ground. And the Chinese are new kids on the block, so to speak, right? They are very, very new in the region. And, even though, the Chinese, communities outside China had a very long migration, history, but they're quite new in the Arab Gulf region, a lot newer than the Indian South Asian immigrants. And then, I saw Professor Neha is here in the audience. So she's written quite a lot about the Indian diasporic communities in the region. But the Chinese are really new. They're also very small when they started. So from the 1990s, and there were just about 2,000 of them, from various sources. And it was just a very, very tiny community. And then from 2009 onwards till 2019, before COVID, right, the number just exploded. We're looking at 100 times of growth, really, from this 2000s in early 1990s by 2018, we have a number which was given by the Chinese General Council of Dubai. And she said it's, we had 280,000 Chinese in Dubai alone. So that's a huge explosion of Chinese population in the region. And of course, this was mostly sustained by trade, by commerce. And then it's also, starting to show different shapes in terms of professional diversities, demographic characteristics also changed. So I've documented that change and written extensively about their experiences. 2013 was, also, sort of an important time when, the China's Belt and Road Initiative rolled out, and that offered another opportunity for businesses to enter the region, and also for the Arab and then UAE business people to engage with the Chinese partners, right? So that was this sort of a historic time, and then my research on the Chinese community sort of took shape during that period of time. It was a very interesting time for myself as well, as I observe what is happening in the region, looking at something very typical about migrant communities, temporary migrants, transitional lifestyle. But also, start paying attention to some of these nationalism that grew on the ground. The Chinese people becoming much more confident about themselves, and then very proud of their heritage, right? And because China was getting stronger, and China had a very good relationship with the UAE, and the UAE was willing to sort of, offer Chinese classes to their students now. So there's a very strong sense of nationalism and being very proud of who they are. And then, the desire to migrate to some other places may not be as strong as before. So UAE became this kind of, the very fertile ground for these adventurous business people to start something new. And UAE's environment is also very friendly to new ideas, right? So I think, at that time, I already start paying attention to some of the new things. Next slide. Just a little bit more about, the type of, engagement, and then China has been involved in with the UAE markets, right? And this is especially, evident after COVID. And COVID was quite a, an important opportunity, and it was a crisis, but also became an opportunity for China to engage more with, the Gulf countries. Not just in terms of trade and commerce, and we start seeing this in this, very rapid, diversification of collaborations, right, in all kinds of aspects. So there's a lot more collaboration in research and development, medical research in particular. Vaccine, was the first vaccine, the Sinophone, was produced and then was tested actually in the UAE, among UAE population. I was one of the volunteers there because I had nothing to do at home. So I thought, it's nice to go into these places and observe what people are doing. And then, more recently, you start seeing Chinese technologies here on the ground. And in fact, in October, it just last month, an NIO company, this China's EV company, has signed a contract with UAE, with a UAE company, and then to start their production line here in the country. And then they're also setting up 30 battery service centers in the country. So, you're seeing something that is growing all around. It's not the traditional sort of trade and commerce stories, not so simply. And then there's something much more complex happening. Next slide. And in terms of cultural exchange and then those kind of activities, and there's also a lot of things happening. Chinese school in Dubai is the first Chinese national curriculum school established outside China, which has the support of Chinese government. And so you see all sorts of collaboration on different levels in different aspects. Next slide. And so this is where my book my book came out 2020. It was just in the heat of COVID-19, the pandemic. And so, here is where, I'm going to kind of shift gear to talk about my research on Chinese Muslims, and then more specifically, because my book was more about, everything happening in the UAE around the Chinese community. But then, I do take a very strong interest in Chinese Muslims. So I'm going to kind of focus now. Okay, so next slide. So a couple of images about, the vibrant sort of, religious community here in the UAE. This is a Chinese Muslim community here. It's surrounded, it's during the time of Ramadan, during, Iftar. And then so you see a lot of people celebrating. And next slide. Those are some, typical gatherings during Friday prayers and also during Ramadan. And women have their own sort of gathering time. And so the Muslim communities in the, among the Chinese community, their number is not as big, but, they're very vibrant. So out of, the number that we know today, 400,000 Chinese, there's about 10% Chinese Muslims, and so that's the estimation. But then by any measure, this is still a very, very large Chinese Muslim community outside China in a single place, in a single location. Next slide. So a bit of a kind of my field trip into China, because that is something that I always go back to, and then to understand the kind of connections and then Chinese Muslims I've maintained. So I spent a little bit of time to talk about the background of my research, really, because I really have to situate my research on Chinese Muslims in a bigger kind of context where China is becoming very close to the UAE, and the UAE is a Muslim majority society where Chinese Muslims feel at home, and then they're the majority. But the sense of confidence and then pride is also very evident as Chinese citizens. Many of them are still Chinese citizens, right? So they're facing this kind of challenge. On the one hand, right, it's not as easy to be a Chinese Muslim in the atmosphere today. But in the UAE, Chinese Muslims also occupy a very unique position as a middleman. They have been the bridge makers for a very long time. They remain to be the bridge makers, and so the Chinese consulate, for example, Chinese diplomatic missions have often sought help, okay, from the Chinese Muslim minorities to kind of maintain the ties. And then these are some images I gathered from my field trip to Nanjing. And next picture actually is more important before I jump into the crypto thing. So the next slide. And so here, the painting here, or the calligraphy here on the frame, okay? It says, love your country, love your religion. This is something that I hear repeatedly when I was doing my research here in the UAE. There's something that a lot of people use, to kind of, justify their existence as Muslim minorities in this diasporic space, and then they're very aware of their precarious situation, but then they're also very resourceful and then very creative in terms of how they negotiate their identities in this difficult time, right? But so they found ways to navigate, and then something that I saw in China is also something that I hear in Dubai. So that kind of connections is always there. Next slide. Even though I had a very general topic, but I told Lale that, I'm going to talk more about my recent research on a very, weird topic, probably. A lot of time, we don't see the kind of connections there. And then how did you get into Bitcoin research? And actually, I'm not a Bitcoin expert. I don't really understand how, cryptocurrencies work, in terms of technical aspects. But during my research on Chinese expat communities, and then also, with a focus on Chinese Muslims, I have come to kind of, realize the Chinese Muslims in the UAE has really sort of, benefited from the global connections that, the Dubai, the city of Dubai, and the market in Dubai has been able to sustain. And then one of the things that really interested me is the very, the younger generation entrepreneurial Chinese Muslims, and how they, turn to some of these new technologies in this very, globally, transnationally connected digital economy to kind of, preserve their faith and strengthen their faith, in fact, and then find ways to resist some of these challenges and some of these controls, and then also, to face these challenges. So the title of the paper is right now, so far, is the faith, resistance, and then cryptocurrencies. Try to understand how Chinese Muslim Bitcoiners in a global digital economy. I use the term Muslim Bitcoiners or Chinese Muslim Bitcoiners because this is how people use the term to refer to themselves. So they came up with this term, and I'm using that. But then in my paper, I tend to kind of refer to them as Chinese Muslim Bitcoin entrepreneurs because they are very entrepreneurial, very much risk-taking, and they have all sorts of characteristics that would qualify them as entrepreneurs. But this label is something very interesting that they carry with them because this kind of shape the way that they understand the world and understand history and how they interpret, some of these and the powerful historical forces they had to encounter. Next slide. Okay, so I'm gonna give you kind of a snapshot of my paper because it's very long, and then the journal is able to consider our paper that is actually almost 12,000 words, okay, because we have a lot of interviews. So in a nutshell, what this paper is about, and this paper examines how Chinese Muslim Bitcoin entrepreneurs navigate their Islamic identities amid shifting state policies in China and a Western-dominated global financial system, positioning themselves as alternative historiographers of economic modernity. The paper explores how cryptocurrencies are perceived as tools for resisting post-colonial financial structures and fostering a just and equitable society built on Islamic principles. By tracing the historical development of Chinese Muslim identities through China's modernization process, this paper situates experiences of Chinese Muslim Bitcoin entrepreneurs within broader patterns of Islamic reform and global economic shifts, and offers a nuanced understanding of modern Muslim subjectivities. Through in-depth interviews, the analysis reveals how Chinese Muslim Bitcoin entrepreneurs construct alternative narratives to counter Eurocentric worldviews. And it's a case study. But then through the case study, we highlight the intersection of faith, technology, and economic autonomy, and shows how Chinese Muslims actively engage with their faith and emerging digital tools to assert alternative narratives of modernity. So that's basically the paper in a nutshell. And then, so to put that into context, really, this is a project I started, thinking about when I was invited to kind of work some of these ideas scholars have been engaged with in the last several decades with multiple modernities, and especially by focusing on Islam and modernity. And there's a lot of people who are very interested in the stories of Chinese Muslims, Islam in China. And of course, those studies now needs to have conversations. We need to have dialogues with other scholars. So this is where, the idea came about, and we're really trying to understand and how Chinese Muslims and Islam in China, and trying to, understand the various challenges they're facing, and then how, Muslim agencies, right, get all those resources and then try to reinterpret, and then very innovative about their identity as minorities. in China, but also in the world, and in general. But what we know here, the research gap is that Islamic modernities across Middle East and Southeast Asia being documented. There are a lot of interesting studies out there. We can see how role of religion, how religion actually function in helping to construct modern identities. But what is missing probably is this kind of limitation on how Muslim minorities navigate non-Western contexts. We need to kind of, especially today with the rising of digital economy, there's also very limited research out there to explore intersections of Islam, modernity, and the digital economy. So basically, my paper kind of come into the conversation with the next slides, Lale. Was a case study about Chinese Muslim Bitcoiners. So the specific questions I'm trying to ask and trying to answer is that how do Chinese Muslim Bitcoin entrepreneurs reconcile their faith with shifting state policies? And so this is more sort of, about how, they perceive, their position, and then how, they explain why, Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies becomes important to them. And then how they leverage cryptocurrencies to challenge Western dominated financial systems, and then also promote Islamic principles in economic models. But then of course, these are all done through a case study that in which we conducted in-depth interviews. Next slides. The in-depth interviews and the narrative analysis is basically the methodology we use. And there's several reasons why we use these methods instead of something much more quantitative, because it's extremely difficult to actually get people to talk to us about, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoins, because it has a very, precarious and also, very complex legal status in different parts of the world. Some countries are very open, right? For example, UAE, it's open to cryptocurrencies, and then it embraces the fintech. But in China and in other places, and then for example in China, it's completely banned, right? So it's very difficult to talk to these people. And in addition, these people also have to understand Bitcoin very well, cryptocurrencies very well. They must understand the financial, mechanism. They also have to understand computer very well. So they're very unique group of people, very small. But I think the research sort of tap on some of these very this kind of like people who are on the top of the pyramid in the digital economy, but then they're the troopers, for the rest of the population, the rest of the community. They're kind of like a direction setting group, and so it's very exciting to talk to them. They're a very small number. It's probably about 100 of them altogether. So we managed to talk to 4 central figures in this movement. I would actually call this movement because they're extremely engaging with the population, and then they are very well educated. Some of them have written books and have given a lot of presentations, and then so they're out there promoting the idea. But it's also very legally very complex, the kind of, the boundaries are navigating. So most of their operations are outside China. And then Dubai became such an interesting place because everyone somehow showed up in Dubai, right? One way or another. So this is where, the research was situated. I don't have a lot of time because I want to leave this for discussion. So I'm going to read you a few quotations, and then because that's the bulk of the paper is about. In the paper, I look at, the concept of Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, some of these old challenges for new technologies, and then then the big part of that is about how the interviewees narrate their experiences and reinterpret and their understanding of religion, of a sense of belonging, but then also how they use technology to kind of help them to understand their status today in a global economic system. So next slide. So there are several themes that emerge out of these interviews. So I'm just, reading some of these quotations for you. So one of the themes is about, disillusionment with Western dominated global structures. I wanted to say a little bit about the sort of, the interviewees, and then that would give you a little bit better sort of understanding of those people who are involved in this. The Chinese Muslim big corners, most of them come from two kinds of educational backgrounds. One group is in a smaller number. It's comprised of those who attended national, secular, higher education institutions in China and overseas. And people fall into the other group do not have much secular university education, but study in Arabic Islamic schools in mainland China. So this is this two kind of, groups and within that community. So here I have one quotation. I believe that if the Muslim world experiences a golden age of significant development, it will, in this era, undoubtedly occur within the realm of the crypto society. We have already witnessed this trend in Africa and underdeveloped regions, where people are bypassing the Anglo-Saxon financial model to adopt decentralized payment systems. With the use of mobile, internet, and smartphones, people have swiftly surpassed the traditional media, such as newspapers, television, and books, media monopolized by Western societies for nearly 300 years. I will not read the next one, but then, this is kind of the general sentiment that people express in their interviews. And then, so this is an overall generally, feeling disenchanted with a Western dominated global structure. Somehow, cryptocurrency is offering them a powerful tool and to reinvent, and then, to sort of, to give them that confidence and then to navigate the new kind of global economic order. Next slides. So the next theme that emerged out of these narratives has to do with, their critique of Islamic finance within the dollar system, right? Because, the cryptocurrencies is not inherently Islamic, and then the Chinese Muslim big corners, and of course, and other Muslim cryptocurrency entrepreneurs or dealers, and they all sort of subscribe to this kind of grand narrative, how, cryptocurrency is better. It's helping to resolve some of these issues that Islamic finance couldn't. So, for example, here, the second one, I think it's very interesting here. The one person said Islamic finance is seen as a cover, the main purpose of which is to use it as a tool to obtain the liquidity of US dollars from the Muslim world, turning it into petrodollars in this case. For example, Islamic banks help wealthy people in the Muslim world buy real estate related to Islamic finance in London or the Middle East. But when it comes to the high cost of Gulf workers remitting money to countries like Bangladesh, people turn a blind eye. This means that financial inclusion and its impact on the entire Muslim world have not been addressed. So you hear that, illustrated by people, and then they emphasize the importance of cryptocurrency as something to resolve that problem, right? Islamic finance tend to focus on middle class, upper middle class, and then probably, not really liberating and not helping people who are struggling on the ground. Another theme, next slide, that emerged and has to do with this kind of divine nature of cryptocurrency. This is something that really interests me, in fact, right? Because the decentralization, the feature of inclusivity through algorithm, there's a lot of quotations there. I'm just throwing some of them here. For example, and some people argue, and somebody argued, cryptocurrency is crucial for interactions with the outside world, particularly in remote, disadvantaged, and underdeveloped areas, as well as closed societies. Its most significant feature lies in decentralization and the removal of intermediaries. As long as individuals have access to electricity and the internet, they can join this world without the constraints of other social hierarchies or structures, right? So basically, what they have come to embrace is the idea that cryptocurrency is divine. It really elevates people and then liberate them from all these shackles and hierarchies, right? Just really lift them, elevate them, and to free them from this on the old establishment. And so it's divine in nature. Those are some very interesting conversations we have. For example, this one person became very excited. They said, Bitcoin is a magnificent creation, a truly remarkable one. the emergence of Bitcoin is akin to the introduction of paper currency by the Mongols in the past. And so this person wrote quite a lot about the history of money. And through these narratives, and then they really became this kind of alternative historiographers. So they're retelling the stories, but then from their perspective, right? They're minorities, and then they're trying to find ways around, and then cryptocurrency somehow enabled them to identify that tool to empower them, to help them to navigate, and then to resist, and to create something new. Next slides. This is another theme that emerged, and then I don't have time to talk now, but then it does, kind of tie into some of these ongoing conversations about energy, right? And then how, cryptocurrencies is not just about speculation, it's actually very tangible. This is more technical conversation that, can have with everyone later on. But then from these conversations, what I got is that, and they believe cryptocurrency is not really sort of, speculated. It actually exists, and it's very physical because it relies on electricity. For example, this person said, without electricity, computation cannot occur, right? So it's not something that came out of air. The model for computation is called an algorithm, or put it differently, we call it a logical and a rule-based system. So this gets very complicated, and then the technical terms that they use, and it took me some time to really kind of, understand what they are saying. But basically, what they argue is that Bitcoin itself is a representation of value, and very interestingly, from that perspective, it does not oppose or against Islamic principles, and then the Sharia law. And so from their perspective, it's completely legal, right? So it's not only legal, it's also very ethical, it's divine, and it's liberating. The last slide, I think that's the last slide, is the theme that, and then, constructing alternative narratives and reimagining global connectivity through cryptocurrencies, right? So for example, here, there's some quotations that deal with Chinese Muslims. For example, this person said, for Chinese Muslims, blockchain provides another channel to connect with the world, whether through financial services or entrepreneurial endeavors. Once this bridge established, Chinese Muslim culture, thoughts, or any transmitted information can be shared with any community worldwide, right? So these are the sort of, the themes that emerge out of narratives. And then I'm going to quickly conclude, because I think I just, went on and on about some other research that related to this project, and those projects actually led me to this project, but then from this project, and then I really sort of come to understand, how creative and innovative these Chinese Muslim minorities have become. It's sort of, from the middleman minority in history, right, as traders, merchants, and now they rely on technology and to strengthen their identity, their status in the Chinese community. And then interestingly, they don't just, work alone. They collaborate with a lot of Chinese Bitcoin entrepreneurs. And so, religion is something that has always sustained them, make them distinguished from others, but then they do collaborate. So, because the title of my talk, I really talk about nationalism. So many of them do actually still consider themselves as a very, safely security Chinese citizens, but then they have this kind of vision that, when China is engaging with the world, when technology becomes, the new, logic, rational system of this new order, then, Muslims should be leading the way instead of falling behind, like what happened in the past. And so it's something very uplifting experiences for them. And then, I can see that, this group is really sort of, very grounded in, their social and cultural context as Sinophone Muslims, and then they're not creating something new yet, from trade to technology. And then we've come to this topic. And so I'm going to end here with these quotes. And then, I'm happy to answer questions. I'm sure I've missed a lot of things here.
Wonderful. I'm going to stop the recording now.